the militia,
Absolutely.
and those always turned out to be the countries that didn't get invaded. But if you had oppressive
Absolutely.
nobles, they didn't like to arm their people. So we think 1776 is where this keep and bear arms thing all began. No, it was a free man thing. People had arms in England. That's what the Magna Carta was all about. And that's what's so great about your film is that I think it's a great defense of the Second Amendment.
Absolutely. And I'll just go ahead and say on record, John Rhys Davies is the Charlton Heston of today. I mean, he is a great defender of the Second Amendment. I don't want to really speak for any of the other actors. You know, they're great guys. I know Viggo's obviously a supporter of Dennis Kucinich. You know, and
for the anti-war thing, I know Viggo's active. The point is, your film's message shows how fundamental. People think we want swords or we want guns because we pet them and kiss them and it's our extension of our manhood. No, we know it is handed down. It is a sacred obligation that a free man is armed. A slave doesn't have access to weapons.
Absolutely. And if you look at the greatest periods of English history, they weren't the Dark Ages where, the knights, were paid by the king. They were an age where the king, and as we know, English history is when you study English history, you look at the history of the monarchies, which king was in power at any given time. And the kings that gave the power to the people, they were taking a risk in a way, because if the people didn't like what the king was doing, they wouldn't support him. They'd say, I don't think so, And so, so the king was beholden to the people, and the people had a checks and balance that existed in the sword. So the sword is really a checks and balance.
That's it. You say it so simply instead of me sputtering and babbling it. It is a check and balance. It is a canary in the coal mine. It is a great equalizer. As the UN says, civilian ownership of firearms threatens the legitimate power monopoly of the state. Well, we believe a power monopoly of the state is illegitimate, but that's why this film is so important. And I didn't know it was available today. I guess you just started offering it. So, folks, tell folks how they get it again.
We might get in trouble for this, but, let it be. It's actually available at swordmovie.com and Reclaiming the Blade. It'll be in stores, Target, Barnes & Noble, etc., July 7th. And that's when we're really going to, hit with the publicity. And I'd love to have John Rhys Davies on your show.
Let's do it.
Can. Maybe closer to that date.
And I promise I won't get you on late again. I just got into a rant, and then you were okay with it.
And now, if I could, I would love to send you guys some lightsabers. I'll send you a couple so you guys can. They're a lot of fun. The new Force FX lightsabers. I don't know if you've seen them that Hasbro makes, but they're metal and plastic handles that are really heavy, so they got the good feel and the weight of a sword. And then they have all the sights and sounds of like a real lightsaber.
No, I know. I've got. This is kind of. I've got 5 of them. I've got the little. Well, I've got Yoda ones for my kids, little green ones. Because my bigger daughter and my son, because the baby obviously can't have sword fights, they attack me, and it's gotten to the point where they're beating me, and then I'll be fighting my son alone, and he's beating me some of the time. So we had absolute knockdown dragouts, and the neighbors were looking out their windows in the backyard, and we're it's just total warfare. But no, I want some of those. I want some more.
I'll send some more, and I'll tell you what. Look, I don't mean to get into the whole movie thing, but that's the great thing about movies. When you look at Robin Hood, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Pirates of the Caribbean, 300, Gladiator, all of these movies have the same message, and that is essentially at the core you have a rebel army against an empire. I mean, you look at Robin Hood. You've got Robin Hood. He robs from the rich. He gives to the poor. He protects the poor. King Richard is off on a crusade, and King John is this corrupt tyrant that has taken over England. And here's Robin Hood. He's a rebel. Same thing with Star Wars. Same exact thing. You have the Rebel Alliance. You have Order 66, which was execute all the rebels. You look at Pirates of the Caribbean. You have free sailors, free pirates, and you have this corrupt, tyrannical British Empire at the time. Obviously, a lot of these stories are based in fiction and history, but, Pirates of the Caribbean, whether you're big on pirates or not, I mean, at the core of the story, it's about 3 men fighting against unjust taxes, no representation, and so they were thugs out, doing what they could, Same thing with 300. 300 is a very good example because you have, obviously, 300 Spartans, And then Gladiator, same thing. So, instead.
And by the way, for folks that don't know, 300 is a true story. Now, the movie,
Yes, it
the
is.
comic book version, they add some ridiculous goblins and things, but I mean, that story is true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, for those that don't know.
It's fun to delve into the movies, and that was something
We just lost his phone line. Let's call him back and get him back on. That happens occasionally. Genesis phone system didn't go down, did it? All right, call him back. That was his phone then. Okay, you know what? Let's bring Rob Dew in on this because, again, I wouldn't just have somebody on about a movie about swords. This is about the history of it and how it's a check and balance and how people fought to have the right to be armed. And absolutely, it was also a right to have social mobility. The first things that got liberalized, because, frankly, the kings wanted to have larger, stronger armies to take over other nations, so they allowed limited freedom. But the arming of the people did allow then the overthrow of some of the corrupt regimes that led into the Renaissance more than even the Black Plague did. And then out of that, you had upward mobility. Now, somebody who wasn't born into nobility, they could become a knight. You know, they could become, and then that created, that's why the old fable of King Arthur that has its roots in reality, you know, it was the commoner pulling the sword out of the stone, but of course he wasn't really a commoner. So this is a big deal. This is about getting out of a caste system, and we first see the caste system being overthrown to a certain extent with the free people becoming armed. Going back to our guest, Daniel McNichol, and the new film, Reclaiming the Blade, available here for the first time today at their website, reclaimingtheblade.com. Okay, continue. You got cut off.
Technical difficulties there. But, at the heart of these stories is a message that I think, and hey, that's why they sell tickets for these type of movies, because it's something that resonates with people. You know, and that's the bottom line. If it didn't resonate and it didn't sell tickets, they wouldn't make those.
It's
those
an archetypal, ancestral memory, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
I mean, it's simple. Humans defending themselves from saber-toothed tigers with a club. I mean, you know, you're supposed to have weapons. It's that simple. And the weapons aren't bad. It's the people that wield them sometimes in a bad way. Other points about the film and then the extra disc that comes along with it.
Sure. There's a lot of extra interviews with Viggo Mortensen and Carl Urban, who's in the new Star Trek movie, who was also in Lord of the Rings and has done a lot of sword wielding on a number of films. And then also Ken Sparling from Skywalker Sound did the 5.1 surround mix. So if you're at all interested in just some good. We tried to make the documentary less informative and informative but entertaining at the same time, and I hope we did that because it's I wanted to add some epicness to it. And Lakeshore Records put out our soundtrack, and there's a lot of great artists, The Doves, Juliana Hatfield, Swerve Driver.
You've also got Gimli in it, the dwarf from Lord of the Rings, who's also one of the stars, and stuff like Raiders from the Lost Ark. I love that actor. Tell us about him.
Yeah, John Rhys Davies is a great guy. I mean, he's a wonderful actor. He's very talented. He narrated the film, and
you were talking about him earlier. He's the guy that is a patriot for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, no questions asked. I mean, John is he's a lover of history. He understands history. He understands where we're at today. And as I said, I think we should definitely get him on the show to talk. So He's a great guy. Actually, I wrote the narration for him, but he's so intelligent and bright that he actually added his own, personality to it. You know, I'm not the greatest writer in the world, so he was able to work with me on that, and we were able to really get a great message in there. And no, I knew from the start when I started developing the film that he'd be a great voice for it. And,
tell us about this sword master that did all the Star Wars stuff and the rest of it, because I think I've seen him in the documentaries about Lord of the Rings. That's the guy that trained Viggo, right?
Sure. Yeah, Bob Anderson. He's trained Errol Flynn. He's 80 plus years old. So I feel fortunate that we were able to sit down with him and have this interview. He's very spry for 80, and he's an amazing person. He trained, Johnny Depp, Viggo Mortensen. He's a very well-known.
He looks like he's about 68 years old, and you're saying he's 80.
Yeah, he looks good, and that's part of what I would like to see is exercise with the sword, because It's something that attaches you. It's not just running in a you're not just running on a treadmill. You're exercising with a sword. There's